So this is the latest part of the Kudila television channel being broadcast at approximately 21:55 hours GMT online on Thursday the 6th of May 2021. And these are the last few minutes before voting end close in East London, where two boroughs, Tower Hamlets and Newham, have referendum on the future of the corrupt elected mayor post, in addition to votes for the London Assembly and the London-wide mayor at the expense of London. I have voted in the last hour in East London, and it appears, well, in the last 40 minutes, it appears that even in the last hour, there are enough people to take up the spaces on the queues. So in the polling booth that I cast my votes, there were 4 persons sitting at the reception and one at the exit side where you put the completed forms, and there are about 4 other staff, and then there are people waiting on the queues. I was asked to produce the identity at the reception, and I said that I had checked and I didn't have to produce the identity. So they accepted that. But why were they asking this? And the person said that it makes things easy. It might do, but then there shouldn't have been the clear guidance on the papers before the election day that I don't have to carry either the polling card or any identity. And that is one. The other is the direction to the polling stations and polling booths. Various places where elections are being held are using new polling stations or locations. And on the internet, on the search, there is no clear direction. So I had to spend about a good hour looking for the actual physical location of the place. And there is no mention of the street without having intensive kind of search. And there is a clearly, easily identifiable place, which is a primary school next to the opposite the polling station. If they had said the name of the primary school in the directions on the internet, that would have been the easiest thing. So, although voting is emphasized as being the most important democratic kind of right, voting is not being facilitated in London, or at least not in the area that I have had to use. And I don't think that this is a problem just confined to that particular borough. And there are other deficits in the democracy kind of campaign, so called. I shall go into that in a few minutes. This is now coming to 1 minute, well, less than 1 and few seconds before polling booths and voting close. And this is just after few seconds after 10 o'clock local time, that is 2200 hours GMT, on Thursday, the 6th of May, 2021. So the voting have closed. And let's wait and see what the outcome is. As I said, at this stage, it is impossible to realistically predict the outcome of the referendum about the future of the elected mayor post in Tower Hamlets and in Newham, because there is no explicit kind of appearance or signs as to which way people are voting. And that is because, as I said before, the democracy deficit. The people in the Tower Hamlets and Newham Labour parties only began any communication that is not direct communication, it's the communication via the leaflets that only came about in the middle of the week. And the communications are not about democracy, not about accountability, not about fighting corruption, and not about the abuse and abuses of the power or powers made available to the elected mayors. And that has been the case, that is the absence of any discussion about those factors and issues and those aspects. In the case of Newham, it has been 19 years. And in the case of Tower Hamlets, 11 calendar years. And even in the latest kind of apparent campaigning, canvassing, done by some members of the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets, going strictly by the evidence that has been accessible on the internet, there has been no real dedicated discussion about the role of the elected mayor post holder and the lack of any democracy and the need for accountability and the impact the corrupt post and the corrupt post holder have against the rights of the people whose needs and rights are among some of the most urgent in the case of Tower Hamlets and in many cases in Newham. And there is no concept of accountability discussed. So our campaign has been, that is the Kudilar campaign, in association with the Bangilar campaign, which I set up in 2010. And associated activities have been the main running, continuing campaign throughout the last 11 calendar years against the elected mayor post. And the reason why that has been the case, I shall be going into after taking a look at the papers of today, London Fleet Street papers, the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. Now, anyone watching this for the first time must understand that this is not a propaganda program channel or a commercial channel or a partisan channel or a careerist channel. It's a channel strictly created and based on the ethical, the moral, and universal values, which means that these values apply to everyone, every human being, everyone who is able to access this, and everyone who is able to access this for their own purpose, that is to say, understanding the world as I explain the world, and by reference to the world, I mean the people who are in power in the countries concerned, and the countries include, of course, the what remains of the United Kingdom and the rest of the world where people come from to make up the demography in this country, and it affects the people observing, watching from any other part of the world or parts of the world. The essential service is to universal morality, ethics, accountability, and universal values of equality, transparency, and democracy, of course, democracy in the best possible sense of the term. And we shall be going into the details of the lack of democracy and how to apply democracy as the most powerful force to do good to societies and to prevent bad in societies everywhere. We will be talking about that. And we shall be updating, of course, on the situation faced by so many millions, hundreds of millions of people in India, caused by the threat caused by the twin virus. One is the Narendra Modi virus, and the other is, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, which Narendra Modi unleashed in the latest kind of surge because he wanted a narcissistic, egotistic, corrupt, Hindutva based corrupt program to get an upper hand and to take over political control in various states of India. And he was given a serious blow in West Bengal, which is the area where the provincial government is led by Mamata Banerjee, who is the chief minister. And she has been she is the only woman in such a post anywhere in India. And she has been vilified. She has been vilified by Modi and Amit Shah, two of the most violent, and corrupt inciters of hatred against Muslims in the whole world currently after Donald Trump. And Mamata Banerjee has formed pro-democratic alliances with people that have helped her. And she has got more than 200 seats, whereas Modi's Brahminist, Hindutva-based, hateful cabal has got 77, but that is too many. We shall be talking about the threat to India posed by the Hindutva fanatics, because India will collapse unless they stop Modi and whatever Modi represents. And with the collapse of India, the whole world will face calamities. And we shall not want that to happen at all. And there is a piece in the Financial Times about Modi's version in Britain, Boris Johnson. According to the second piece on the Financial Times, on the front page, Boris Johnson's madman strategy put Brexit talks in turmoil. Michel Barnier diary confides. That is the man who was the chief negotiator on behalf of the European Union with the madman Boris Johnson. And we shall be looking at other bits. And there is a big picture of Nicola Sturgeon on the front page of the Financial Times today, because the SNP was facing election today as well. And the Financial Times is saying that Scottish voters are setting the UK outlook. That is to say, the way the Scottish voters have voted today, the voting finished in the last few minutes, would decide the future of the United Kingdom. The reason why we call the UK within quotation marks, because of the impact of the Scottish independence referendum and independence movement on the rest of the UK and whether the UK remains a UK at all. Now, Sanjeev Gupta, Indian-born or Indian origin person, has agreed terms to refinance his Australian steel plant and associated mines on the eve of a court case to wind up his units in the country. And they've got more on page 10. We shall look at that later. Now, the name Gupta, not Sanjeev Dutt, Gupta, is a very common kind of feature of the news about corruption, widespread corruption, and abuse of government power in South Africa. To what extent this Gupta is related to any other Gupta there is not clear, but we should check. But this Gupta has featured in news not far from the news about David Cameron and Lex Greensill, the Australian crook that bought up and bribed David Cameron. In return for Cameron's services in securing anything up to 20 billion pounds of public money for his corrupt gang. So securing money, big money, by big business crooks is part of capitalism. And this is the aspect that so-called socialists totally fail to politically, ethically, democratically make any use of in any way, trying to end capitalism and replace it with a better system. And the letters in the Financial Times cover recession, clean power, and a kind of diversity in Westminster. And there is an opinion piece in a notebook from the USA by Lauren Fedor, who is criticizing the Catholic bishops for being wrongful and wrong in their attack on Joe Biden. And Robert Shrimsley is talking in the Financial Times, page 23, about Boris Johnson must face up to COVID public service crisis. Now, this is a contradictory piece by the Financial Times writer, because Financial Times is financial crimes, despite the bits that we are reading from its coverage. But the bits we are reading should be treated by anyone viewing this as references. We are not agreeing with anything the Financial Times is saying about the values or impact of the things. And because it's the election day, voting day for local elections, including several so-called metro mayors, and this one is headed, Metro Mayors Stall Johnson's Devolution Agenda. Powerful local leaders such as Barnum in Greater Manchester have loosened Westminster's grip on political life. And it says in the section under part of that piece, under local elections, Starmer braced for day of judgment. Now, this is a completely dishonest, criminally irresponsible, and stupid financial crime piece peddling Andy Barnum in Greater Manchester. We shall talk about Andy Barnum another time, because Barnum is a criminal that needs detailed examination. Now, here is eligibility criteria on the Financial Times, and there are three names to that piece. One is Sarah Neville, Chris Giles, and George Parker. And the headline is, or the heading is, Social Care Reform Falters on Tories' Pledge to Safeguard Housing Wealth in Assessments. Now, these are the phrases and terms in that particular piece. So let's look at the actual heading. Now, this is a piece. This headline or the heading contains these factors and elements: social care reform falters on Tories' pledge, safeguard housing wealth assessments. Now, these are the factors components, and these are factors that are very much central to the area of local council duties and services. But this is a one-off thing in the financial crimes, and the analysis is wrong because it doesn't hold the elected post holders to account. And it doesn't say that there is no relief, there is no remedy to wrongdoing and wrong decisions and abuses and neglect by the councils of the safeguarding duties under the broad range of social care duties and obligations. And the safeguarding concept is such a central part of the duties owed by local councils to the people in the boroughs and in the communities covered by the councils, that it is not to be treated as a peripheral. Like, for example, when we say that Tower Hamlets Council failed its safeguarding the children duties in relation to the 4 Bethnal Green schoolgirls. We don't say that peripherally. That claim by our campaign, the Tower Hamlets Council has betrayed these girls, neglected their duties, covers everything. And we shall come to that in a minute after going over this particular piece online that we have tweeted about earlier this evening. That at the time serving Metropolitan Police employee, we don't call these people officers, because officers, the term officer or officers elevates or elevate the person being referred to a level of dignity, competence, impartiality, respectability that they don't deserve based on the role that they play, let alone based on the misconduct that they engage in. So this particular one that has featured in the online news piece about the disciplinary hearing about misconduct by a then serving police person called Mark Tuffrey contains a reference to Shamima Begum. And that reference is that there should be a shrine to Shamima Begum, and he made a mocking kind of graphic attack on a Muslim woman employee in the police who was based in the same section of the Metropolitan Police that this racist, wrongdoing, sexist, anti-Muslim was based in. So he has made sexual harassment and gestures towards the woman, including describing her anatomy in lurid details. And then he placed a kind of item on her desk referring to a shrine to Shamima Begum. Now, Shamima Begum is very much in the news, but she's not in the UK, and she's in a kind of camp somewhere in Syria, what they call the Roj camp or Roji camp. Now, Shamima Begum, therefore, has been used as a representative figure representing the Muslims, Muslim women, bad Muslim women. So this police person, police employee, Metropolitan Police employee, was doing all of that, and he was bringing in Shamima Begum as a figure of hatred, to be hated, and a figure to be kind of treated as worth being murdered or killed. Now, this is why when we say that the Tower Hamlets Council neglected its safeguarding children duties, we mean to include the impact of that neglect that goes beyond the actual physical, particular personnel kind of needs and emergency faced by these girls. For example, this factor of Shamima Begum being in the news in the way that she is in the news represents a trigger point that can be used by racists and haters and anti-Muslim provocateurs to incite additional aggravated hatred against Muslims. So that affects the whole of the community, absolutely innocent of any wrongdoing. So the Tower Hamlets Council, as the local council, should have been aware of the impact on the rest of the community that their failure caused and led to. We shall be talking more about that in due course again and again. And in the context of the votes that I've just closed about the future of the elected mayor post in Tower Hamlets and in Newham, that neglect of the safeguarding children duties was carried out by the incumbent in the post of elected mayor during the two parts of the years covered by these neglect. One part is before John Biggs became incumbent on June 11, 2015. And the previous one was Lutfur Rahman, whose incumbency was ended by the ruling by the election commissioner, Richard Morey, dated 23rd of April 2015. So 23rd of April to 23rd of May is 1 month, and then 11th of June, just under 4 weeks. 8 weeks, 4 weeks and another 3 weeks, let's say 7 weeks. So the 7 weeks were kind of interim period in Tower Hamlets Council without any real incumbent in the real elected mayor post. And whoever was incumbent could not be equated to an ordinary incumbent in terms of leveling and attaching blames and responsibilities for the negligence of the safeguarding duties owed to the Bethlehem school girls. Because for those 7 weeks, Tower Hamlets Council, so-called administration, was understandably excusable because it was in a state of turmoil. Turmoil caused by the Lutfur Rahman failures and turmoil about the uncertainty that was lying ahead after the 11th of June election that was held directly as a result of the ruling by Richard Morey. Now, as a factual narrative about Armed Council, I have said that our movement has existed, movement defending the community in and from the East End of London has existed since 13th of June 1963. So 63, 73, 83, 93, 2003, 2013. That is more than 50 years. It had existed for more than 50 years. Nearly 60 years now. Before Biggs became incumbent. And for those 50 and 60 years now, respectively, our movement has done unique world exclusive work in analysis, in investigation, in research, and in communication exclusively, covering the formal law and the actual law and the application of the law in every aspect of society that is impacted on by the local council, impacted by the locally elected member or members of parliament, and also, of course, by the locally elected representative to the London Assembly. I have just voted for the London Assembly candidate, and so therefore the elections have been held regularly, and most of the electors, including myself, have done our democratic duties and have been voting in good faith according to the law and procedures. But in return for voting properly, regularly, consistently, the voters have not received their service, either from the London Assembly members or from the members of Parliament or from the members of the council, that is, councillors, and most emphatically, not from the elected councillor post holders who got elected as well. One of the lines that has been seen and observed and witnessed as being peddled by the ones that want to foist Luther Roman again on the post of elected mayor has been that the mayor is elected directly by the people, by the voters. That is the biggest lie, because the mayor is not elected directly by the electors with any express right available to the voters to challenge, to question, to demand answers from the person that is in the post that they voted for. So that is a completely false and criminally dishonest and misleading statement to make about the concept of direct election. That is only 1% of the picture. 99% of the picture is withheld from that statement and is withheld by the incumbent throughout the period of their incumbency. So therefore, that is a lie. It is intended to be a lie, and it is a lie. Okay, so we are going to the papers now. This is the Churchillian venture stunt by Boris Johnson, sending the gunboats to Jersey to confront the French army, apparently sieging or blockading Jersey. Now, there is a piece in the Times. We shall be talking more about that, but this one is about Rachel Hayhoe Flint, a female cricketer. And there is a row about a memorial in her honor. But going back to the elections in the local councils and the mayoral elections in some of the regions, pages 6 and 7. And the Times is saying that Boris Johnson is heading towards a historic hat trick on today's elections. And today, therefore, is being kind of celebrated by the right wing as a super Thursday. And there is a piece on page 10 of the Times today which says the pneumonia and flu now kill more people than COVID. Well, let's put it this way. We have exclusively commented and analyzed the evidence and said that one of the things that was highlighted and brought to light and still remains highlighted by the appearance of this pandemic, COVID-19, is the brazen extent of lack of preparation by the so-called nation states to provide medical and other support and care to the affected people by the virus. And this was only an extrapolation of our analysis of the UK's National Health Service not being allowed to be properly prepared for the various illnesses and health needs of the people. And we said, and we said today again in updating our theme and thesis and our narrative, that vested interests operating within the NHS, typified by the consultants, have been allowed to rob and loot and plunder the resources and the facilities of the NHS, thereby undermining the NHS to suit the strategies and caprices and greed of private health business that the consultants were promoting and acting as agents of, and have been and are. And we have said that despite the fact that the UK Labour Party makes periodic claims, our National Health Service or our NHS, the Labour Party has been absolutely stupid and corrupt and dishonest because it has not provided, while in office, the Labour Party has not provided the necessary structural, organizational, ethical facilities and resources to the NHS. And all the NHS health secretaries appointed by the Labour Party in power have been less than fit for purpose and have failed or have refused to confront the looters, the consultants, and the looters' agents. And so therefore the NHS has been treated as an object by the Labour Party, which makes claims, our NHS, for purposes other than to provide the fit and proper health service. Those purposes are to do with getting the votes and having a kind of area of achievement that the conservatives don't have. So the incumbent in the post of the health secretary or the cabinet member, allegedly for health and for looking after the NHS, every time was found to be deficient in knowledge and lagging far behind the looters and robbers and so on. So the NHS has never been left alone to be built as a fit and proper organizational service for the provision of that service for which it was founded. Provide health care at the point of need. It never was available. And in the context of our diagnosis, the National Health Service has always been one of the most racist obstructors and deniers of service. And as a result, the disproportionately large number of deaths by the COVID in Britain in 2020 of people of African and Asian origins was not the first time that it happened. Large, disproportionate numbers of people have been let down by the NHS because of racist discrimination operated brazenly right across the board, and the patients and their relations and their families and their loved ones are never treated with respect and are never supported in their efforts to help their sick and unwell relations while in contact with the NHS or installed in place in the hospitals or facilities. Time to time, particular cases come to light that highly point to the racist criminality and the agenda of murder that is operated against the targets of the NHS as racism, and in particular the NHS personnel, decision-making personnel's anti-Muslim murderous agenda. For example, the children. One child who is now has been in Italy for more than a year now was only saved from being murdered by the Royal London Hospital in East London in Tower Hamlets because of the determined campaign and effort of the child's two parents. Both of them uncommonly are above average educated, if you like. The average person in the community is not similarly educated or informed or aware, let alone determined. So all of these factors take us back to the elected mayor and the neglect of the safeguarding children duties as owed to the 4 Bethnal Green schoolgirls. In the report that Price Waterhouse and Cooper published, about the abuse of resources by Luthu Rahman. They included parts of the evidence, not everything they found, but parts of the evidence that confirm the serious danger to life and safety that Luthu Rahman ignored and allowed to be perpetuated by the overall Taramlas Council. Because Luthu Rahman gave any amount of money. I say any because it is not conclusively and definitively published yet. So he gave any number of organizations and outfits money for the sole purpose of getting those organizations or their kind of key personnel to procure votes for Luthu Rahman himself at the 22 May 2014 election. And as I have said before, according to the PwC report audit, Luthu Rahman even gave money to organization or organizations, grant money from the council, Taramlas Council, even though those organizations had not made any application for money at all. So Luthu Rahman not only abused and did wrong and committed multiple crimes, because that was deception and fraud, contrary to the Theft Act and updated definitions. So for him to say that he was not prosecuted by the Metropolitan Police, so therefore he was innocent, is a criminality in itself. Because as he was still on license as a licensed solicitor, law trader, he was under obligation according to the Code of Conduct published by the Law Society through the Solicitors Regulation Authority, that he must not tell lies and he must not fabricate anything and he must not bring the profession into disrepute. He did bring the profession into disrepute, as a result of which the SRA and the Law Society completely stripped him of the license, and he is no longer licensed to practice law as a solicitor. All of these are facts. And for somebody like that to be in a position to be in charge of more than £1 billion annual budget, it takes several criminal acts of negligence to arrive at that position. So the imposition of the mayor post was itself criminally motivated, and its operation was criminal, and it should never have been allowed to remain in place. So I don't know whether the voters have voted to scrap the mayor post in Tower Hamlets or in Newham, but they should have done. And let's hope that regardless of the outcome, the demand and the campaign for democracy and accountability and honesty and an end to criminality in the council and via the council, that the campaign continues, and that the campaign continues with more vigor than it has done so far. So what we'll be doing, we'll be coming back to this in the next part or parts. And this is now going to end this particular one. We call it CD, part C and D. for the simple reason that we have done multiple editions and we want to be certain that we are not missing anyone out. So this is the one that is coming to an end just over half an hour long, and we shall